At the Aroostook Band of Mi'kmaq, the effort to uncover history is a constant and ongoing process. There are still so many things yet to be rediscovered, stories unfinished, history books incomplete. When given the opportunity, Mi'kmaq leadership is right out there in the field alongside professionals, as they help uncover the history under our feet. On July 29th, August 12th, and August 17th of 2021, and June 13th of 2022, representatives of the Aroostook Band of Mi'kmaq would visit an array of different historical sites. The first site on the 29th was located at the intersection of the Big Black River and the St. John River. Archaeologist David Putnam came across an account concerning an indigenous woman and child having abandoned their village after the arrival of a deadly disease, this site potentially being that village.
In the early 1900s, and I'm not sure the date, but it was during the diphtheria epidemic, and on their return back towards Madawaska in the spring, they contracted diphtheria, and the vast majority of them died of the disease, and many of those people were reputed to be buried here at the mouth of the Big Black River, where it flows into the upper St. John. We were here today to use ground penetrating radar to see if we could identify features that look like human graves, and we were unable to do that, but there's a lot of raspberries and places that we couldn't access with the GPR. So I think the next step is historical research.
This story caught the interest of Mi'kmaq leadership, and they would help organize a visit to the site. One of the individuals brought along was Dr. Chenzang Wang. Here, he utilized ground-penetrating radar in open areas at the site. What this device allows for is to observe disturbances within the soil, at least a few feet deep within the ground. If there were areas where the ground was disturbed for buildings, pits, and even graves, the device would be able to uncover it. Unfortunately though, with only a small amount of the land cleared, Chenzang was only able to look at a very small amount of the overall area. But there is the potential there could be a lot more there, especially in the areas where plants now grow. The only way to know for sure is to utilize more techniques for collecting data in and around the area. The trip on August 12th would involve an invite of tribal representatives to an undisclosed area in the northern Maine woods. The area would be at the center of a massive stone tool and weapons operation that existed hundreds to thousands of years ago. The project, spearheaded by Dartmouth College, they found the location after a long search brought upon by finding mysterious red stones and arrowheads, in some cases as far south as Pennsylvania.
And we pretty quickly realized that that was the signature for these very, very old sites. I expanded the research to areas close by, and after 20 some odd years we had 7 sites, and in each one of those sites were artifacts made out of this brilliant red glossy Munsungan chert, but also some other colors of Munsungan as well. And all of the sites had this exotic chert, and we realized this was one of the signatures for that time period. So when we discovered other sites that happened to have just even the flakes of this exotic material, we were very confident that it would be this very ancient time period.
The archaeologists would go on to show representatives some of the areas they found a significant amount of artifacts, notably stone fragments left there by people working on a special type of stone, specifically a type of stone known as chert, and there is an enormous amount of it here. One of the reasons chert is so valuable is its glassy nature. Hitting it just right can allow for fragments to break off in such a precise manner that it can allow for the stones to be worked into very sharp objects. Obsidian can be made sharp for similar reasons. It's glassy. Not only that, but there were other colors available such as black, gray, and so on. The color that people appeared to have had a preference for the most though here was red, showing that the red color was something of importance to the people who worked on these stones. Finally, and one of the most interesting observations about this area is the fact that it was a place of learning. Much like the schools of today, these hills gave people the resources to learn skills they would need to grow and succeed in their world. Numerous artifacts show people were training themselves to make tools and weapons out of the stone here, around the source. People were practicing, which in part was thanks to all of the abundant resources available. During the third visit on August 17th, the archaeologists invited the representatives back once again to show them their findings, this time being accompanied by representatives from other tribes such as the Maliseet. Many of the artifacts were organized, and the sheer quantity of them indicated an extremely high amount of activity and a rich history in the area. At some of the dig sites around the base of the large hills where much of the stone material used to make the artifacts was coming from, the amount of stone fragments put there by people was outstanding.
So what we're doing out here is archaeological survey. So we're doing very small test units, 50 by 50 centimeters, so around a foot. So far, we've excavated 22 of these. Of those, 20 of them contained artifacts, which is a really high percentage of any archaeological site. Most of the time when you go out, most of what you dig will not have artifacts. So this is a very rich area. Of those units, those 20 that have produced artifacts, we have over 2,000 individual pieces. Most of these are chipping debris. So most of these are the product of making stone tools, but we also have a small number of kind of more exciting finds. So we have 2 scraping tools. These are essentially pieces that clearly have been worked up along the edge to create some sort of a tool that could be used for any number of things, working hides, butchering animals, working wood. Plus we also have a more formal, what we call an end scraper. And this is sort of worked on the bottom bit, and this would have been hafted within maybe a wooden handle or a bone handle, and would be used kind of in a more consistent scraping pattern. And then we have channel flakes. Channel flakes are exciting for us because they tell us that people were making fluted projectile points, which are the earliest style of projectile point anywhere in North America. So those are kind of the most exciting.
At the top of the hills where much of the resource was originating from, there are numerous areas to indicate people were actually taking large amounts of stone from them. And again, with a preference for red stone.
What we're looking at here is a relatively large deposit of chert or cherty tuff. And what makes this rock special here in this specific location is that it is very fine grained and breaks like glass. And that makes it such that by striking the rock in various ways you can control how the rock breaks, and archaeologists call those flakes that are removed. So you can control how those flakes are removed to make specific shapes, like a scraper or an arrowhead. And what we're seeing here in this location is that this rock is particularly good for that. And also some evidence, pretty good evidence that folks were here in the past, hundreds if not thousands of years ago, removing blocks of this rock to make tools. And part of the reason that we think that is some of the marks on this rock face. For example, here, right, indicate that someone struck this right here and broke a flake off. Also here you can see crushing where the rock has been shattered, probably with another large hammerstone, right? Again, indicating that folks in the past were coming here and trying to break off large pieces of this to make stone tools, which makes this a very, very special spot.
During the final visit on June 13th of 2020, Dartmouth College brought up a team of students to camp out and work on collecting even more samples. Our visit was on the last day of the project after about a week's worth of work. Their findings were even more impressive than last time.
So here we are back in the North Main Woods at the site that we were working at last year. And what we've really been trying to do this year is expand on some of the finds from 2021. So in 2021, we laid out a number of shovel test pits, 50 by 50 centimeter squares, and some of them had really large quantities of artifacts in them, a huge number of flakes. One of them had over 1,100 flakes in one 50 by 50 centimeter shovel test. And what we did in a different area of the site this year was open up 1 by 2 meter test blocks to try to gain a better understanding of the spatial patterning of the flakes below ground, to try to understand what may have made that concentration, whether it was actually a product of human activity or whether it was simply a tree tipping over and dropping a large pile of flakes in one spot. So far, it's led up to more questions than answers. The spatial patterns aren't entirely clear. We did find one location with a fairly large stack of flakes that appears as though they may have been placed in the ground or perhaps inside a bag or a basket, although any organic material would have long since rotted away. Another really cool find from this year, also from a shovel test pit, was a small flake of chert that is not from here. So it's really neat to have a piece of raw material that has been brought from far away to a quarry area like this, where there's functionally infinite raw material. But it stands to reason that this would be where people would discard that, right? Where they were able to make new tools and not need the old tools that they had. But what's really cool about that piece, I think, is that our best guess from where it came from right now is from basically the Bay of Fundy from Nova Scotia, which is awesome. And we, not awesome, not because it's unexpected, but it's cool to have that physical evidence of that. Another activity that we've been up to this year is expanding our area of shovel test pits further out into this flat landform where I'm standing now. Although it's hard to tell exactly what you're looking at with all the trees. Nonetheless, from the state available LiDAR, or light detection and ranging, that lets you remove the trees, we're in a big flat spot. And so we've had the students with the Salve Regina Archaeological Field School come up here and do the hard work of actually digging below the surface to see what artifacts might be in this area. And many of the shovel test pits that we've excavated here have had a number of artifacts in them. Not as many as further down the area we were working last year, but it's an interesting indication that this landform has a great deal of archaeological potential, and that people in the past were using most, if not all, of this large flat area. In the future, we hope to expand upon that further. So that's basically been what we've accomplished this year.
With the site having had so much to offer, with so much history yet to be discovered, the work being done here only further contextualizes the rich history of these lands. And the impact of that is something just about everybody there could feel.
We want to see the information, right? Because this information is part of our story. So we would get to fill in, gaps in our history or what we know for our history.
I see it being used as a way to connect with past cultural connections. It's easier to see the sort of long-term history when you can touch the artifacts, the flakes, just everything that our ancestors made in your hands, rather than seeing it on a page or on a movie or any sort of non-tactile medium.
To come and to see what they're taking out of these small holes, it's just amazing that, could have been my ancestors that were here, and just to see the work that my ancestors were doing, 500 years ago, 12,000 years ago, it's just amazing.